Well, folks, what a day to be alive. The 31st of October will go down, hopefully, in history, because I've just come off the back of listening to the new Unprocessed album. That dropped today also, and it was mental, like so unbelievably good. So, Currents, unfortunately, none of their... completely out of their control, but they unfortunately have to follow up after Unprocessed. Now, if there was a metalcore band that could do it, I think Currents would be up there for bands that I would anticipate that they definitely can follow up from Unprocessed. They dropped a surprise EP, which I absolutely adore. Can we take a moment to just a little round of applause for Currents for doing that in today's landscape, in today's society? Dropping a surprise EP like that? You mean we get a 5-track EP and we've only heard one song? In this economy? You know? And the only song we've heard is the opener? And then it's all new music? Unbelievable. Shout out to Currents. I understand why bands do the whole single thing, like the waterfall effect or the waterfall method, because obviously it gives them more time to grow the brand and more people get on board with the singles, and then eventually the album comes out and then people are like, oh my god, the album's out, let's buy the album. I get it. It makes financial sense. However, it does sometimes take away from the actual album experience when the album does drop, because you've heard like 50% of the album, and like sometimes the way it's spaced out, you've kind of heard like all of the pivotal moments of the album as well, so it doesn't really feel like that much of an experience when an album drops. So I can really appreciate Currents doing this, although it might not be the most financially smart thing in the world. I still really appreciate it. So I tip my cap to Currents, but in saying that, I think people have gotten so sick of this waterfall method and they just like crave surprise drops now, that this actually could have the opposite effect, where although it's not like the best thing to do for the band in terms of the economic side of things in the business, people are so like fed up of having heard half of the album now that this might actually have the opposite effect and just be like, you know, it might give them more of a push, because it's like, oh my god, new Currents. Unfortunately, it's a terrible day for this to have happened because there's so much other music dropping. But look, either way, I'm excited as always to check out Currents. I enjoyed It Only Gets Darker. I think that chorus grew on me quite a lot, so I'm interested to hear it again with the other songs. It's 20 minutes long. Currents, all that follows, 2025. Let's do it. Not what I went back to much, but when I was editing clips and shit for the song, I was like, this is a good song.
betray my reality. When you walked away, when you walked away, I've replayed every memory.
This drop here.
That's looking down at me. Wasn't death or it anymore. All vision, no faith. Too much too late. And now I feel it stitching me. Under the flame, the weapon of loss, designed to carve on our fate. Engaged, yet saved. I'll never rise the ways of failure. Now surrender myself. Deep down I fear that it only is darker. Now surrender myself. Deep down I fear that it only gets darker.
Sick.
Isolation's cause. Regardless the love and fraud. Infected with hatred. And all over feeling lost. And all over feeling lost.
All the music. It's 20 minutes long. We've already done 4.5 minutes of it. So let's just let this play and we'll talk about it at the end. I'm just going to really let this sink in. New songs. Oh yeah. Chris Wiseman, you fucking freak. Oh my god, yeah. Ooh. They are just good, aren't they? Okay. I see the energy they're bringing for this EP. This doesn't seem like it's going to let up at all.
Making circles in the dark to find we're clouded. We're lost. No use counting on the stars to guide us over it. This constant motion. Bright lights race into silence. I'm done living through this lens. Can't handle the light of stars as I have. By waking up, are we starting over? We're building our defense to avoid making our amends. We're kneeling to the forces that made us powerless. Move on and forget. Is it possible to not be swept into violence? Why is it just so hard to fight? Yeah, yeah, they'll turn this on its head. They'll say you're one of the same. Breaking it on display. The bloods of lies under a branding cross. Remiss the thing that I paid. Fixated on what you think. You're in my way. Temporary lies told by temporary gaze. If you think that you're beside yourself, you're already ahead. By waking up, are we starting over? We're building our defense to avoid making our amends. We're kneeling to the forces that made us powerless. Move on and forget. Is it possible to not be swept into violence? Why is it just so hard to fight? To all the problems and all the pain, when all the answers are all the same. I move on and just forget. To all the problems and all the pain, when all the answers are all the same. I move on. If we could just believe we have nothing for ourselves, then we can live our lives like one disillusioned with above. Or we can run inside ourselves, too scared to face the truth. We're slaves around us. So much for the fist of God. Now that you're gone, I'm questioning everything. But I'm convinced of this. You're in my way. You're in my way.
Currents like don't ever really recreate the wheel, but they are like the pinnacle of, I guess, metalcore in its like purest form, I want to say, because obviously we have a lot of bands that have kind of strayed into different fields. Like Polaris and Currents are very good examples of like bands that have kind of stayed true to that like sound that is metalcore. Obviously it's been misconstrued. I'm just gonna stop talking for a moment.
That's it for me. I'm painting everything. Now I'm breathing in sick. I'm running and I can't turn back. Everything was made clear when you sold your hands. I'm running and I can't turn back. Hit the floor. What the fuck do you take me for?
so sick. I'm so locked in. Jesus! Oh my god, that was 2 minutes of just pure... That's all I asked for. Oh, brother.
Finally, with a silent sigh, my heart began to bleed.
We're not done here, folks. Jesus Christ.
You think your season will change, but only winter still remains. But only winter still remains.
So much to say, but I just don't have time to say it. I don't have time. We'll say it at the end. Good lord. Oh, mother. Circle pad!
These silver ties, they cut the ones that we love. The future starting to feel like a memory. Are we enough? Or is this part of the drive? Nothing feels like it matters when the silence cries. I can't find what's left for me besides another rising fall.
this sound right here is just like,
keeping it down.
if I could take one piece of Currents to like show someone,
We all know our fate. We're every pages of our prophecy. How beside its lies. We all adults and so this story ends. Life without the key. Will it be swallowed by the sun? Or does it survive? Will they remember when we're gone? When will we be gone?
that is how you do a surprise EP. Very little fluff or fat on that. It's just like, look, we've given you one single just to get our names back out there after the last album, you know, do the high budget video and everything. And then it's been a while. To be fair, I actually only had this thought the other day. I was like, where are Currents? Because they had that video, and then, you know, you would expect another song. I don't think there was anything announced with that particular music video, so I think everyone just assumed it was like the next stage of the next album. And then over time, you're kind of like, wait a minute, where is the next song? And then boom, today of all days, to be dropping a surprise EP with so many other bands and singles being dropped or albums being dropped in other projects, and you know, there's just music everywhere at the moment. I had to check out Currents, and I'm so glad I did. Such a good band. It's like, they're obviously a massively popular band, 1.2 million monthly listeners on Spotify. I feel like they never, in the grand scheme of conversations, they never really come up much, and I think there's a few things that maybe play into that. Thinking about it right now, in my own thoughts, and again, this is completely up to interpretation, and also happily have you guys chime in the comments. It feels like they are just this, I put them kind of in the same ballpark as Polaris. Maybe they don't have the same live presence as Polaris. I've seen both bands live, and I would definitely take Polaris any day of the week over Currents from a live standpoint. Maybe I just got them both at like different stages of I've seen them in the same venue. Yeah, same venue. So everything was like pretty much intact for it to be like a very equal and fair, you know, comparison. And I think Polaris's stage presence and everything about them is just so much more energetic. So I think they come up a little bit more in terms of like the conversation around like the kind of maybe more traditional sounding metalcore bands that exist today. But Currents are definitely in that same conversation. Again, it's just like a few different factors. Maybe Polaris have just kind of gotten a bit more of a live presence, and you know, maybe they've had some bigger songs from a commercial standpoint. Maybe that's why they stand out. But I definitely put these guys in the same kind of ballpark as Polaris for those who are like flying the flag for your like traditional modern metalcore sound, because I know modern metalcore stretches like as far as the likes of Bad Omens, but we've had a lot of conversation recently where it's like we need to kind of come up with a new subgenre or style to categorize Bad Omens and Dayseeker, like these kind of bands that were metalcore at some point. Obviously still a different style to what Currents are doing right now, but we do kind of need to have some kind of a way of differentiating them. And I know people are saying that they're kind of like alternative rock and alternative metal, and some people are saying like post metalcore, where they were metalcore and they've kind of taken some of the tropes of metalcore and brought it into this new alternative world. I think alternative rock is probably a good way of describing them. But then again, Bad Omens go like so industrial and all this kind of shit, so it's kind of a hard way to describe it. I would say it's like a post metalcore, maybe an alternative metal is probably the better way of describing it. But the point is that Currents are one of these bands that I would say is at the forefront for flying the flag for that kind of like just no strings attached. I want to say run of the mill in the most respectful way possible, because this is peak metalcore. Like metalcore at its absolute essence. 20 minutes of just like so much fucking aggression from start to finish. Like I said, no fat. I've liked every song on this. I'm going to add Rise and Fall as well, because I feel like this is a very easy EP to just throw on from start to finish and just get to the gym. Great shit. I want to speak about Brian specifically. Brian's a great fucking vocalist. Again, I've seen him live. Again, I think Currents maybe don't have the most commanding stage presence from me seeing them live. Like Polaris, you have no choice. If Polaris are in the building, you're glued to their stage presence. Currents are a little bit more reserved, and they kind of let their music do the talking. Not to suggest that Polaris don't let the music talking. Polaris can do both. They're incredible musicians, and they know how to really sell it on stage. Currents, From a live standpoint, they pull it off absolutely fantastic. Brian is an incredible vocalist, but again, he just kind of lets his voice do the talking. He has a bit of a presence, but it's not like, you know, crazy chaos like the likes of Jamie Hales from Polaris. On this, I feel like Brian, like, from his actual vocals, I love a lot of Current's choruses, a lot of their hooks, a lot of the nuance to their music, like even the way the album ended there with that like atmospheric section where Brian is, it sounds like he has this kind of like megaphone effect on his vocals where he sounds like he's a bit far back in the mix, and it's a very atmospheric mix overall that just gives it this like nihilistic, especially with the lyrics, it just feels very dready. I don't know the best way to describe it, but it is just Current sound in a nutshell. They have that really unique sound to a certain extent, but then again I look at it and I'm like, Brian, to me, and this is like actually a kind of more of a compliment, he fits into the role of Current so well, but I don't think he necessarily does anything that makes him massively stand out. And I think maybe again this is like comparing the likes of Current and Polaris, and I don't want to keep harping on this, but because I've made that initial comparison I might as well keep doing it. I think Jamie Hales has a little bit more of a distinguishable vocal style. His screams are absolutely amazing. Again, he's got a lot of like big live performance videos where he's just commanding the crowd and shit, so I guess that maybe makes Polaris stand out a little bit more in my mind. But Brian doesn't necessarily do anything that's like extremely recognizable, but he just fits into Current sound so well. And he lyrically, I'd have to delve into the lyrics on this, but this sounds dark again. I love Current for that. Like I just love the angst you feel when you listen to his lyrics. Like he's just really belting it out. Some of the lyrics were like, seemed like they were a little bit politically charged, but he just works so well with the overall package that is Current. Obviously Chris Wiseman, incredible guitarist. I know there is other members of the band here, I'm not familiar with their names, I just know Chris because obviously he's kind of everywhere with Shadow of Intent and stuff, and he's just incredible. This is everything that I could have asked for from like an instrumental standpoint. Again, following up after the Unprocessed album from a guitar standpoint, it was always going to be a tough task, but this was on par. Maybe not as technical, or I guess as like unique as Polaris, but it's definitely up there from technique. It's incredible stuff. So groovy as well. Like many a moment where I'm just banging my head, and that's what these guys do so well. They don't try and recreate the wheel. You kind of just know what you're going to get all the time with Currents, which is why they're so good and why they have such a high monthly listener count, because there's no fluff. They very rarely will like experiment outside of the realm of that Current sound. On the last album, there was obviously production critiques that a lot of people had. I personally loved the production. I thought it sounded really raw. I understand why some people thought it wasn't great. I think they've refined it a little bit more on this. I think the main thing that I would critique about the last album in terms of the overall production is that some of the mixing elements were a little bit jarring at times. I think in Living in Tragedy, which don't get me wrong is an amazing song, there is moments where some of the higher notes that are being rung out on the guitar are very like ear-piercingly loud, which obviously depending on which system you're listening on, you may or may not notice it. But there was some moments in there that I found a little bit jarring from a mix standpoint. And I understand that people are kind of, you know, dragging that out across the entire album and saying that like maybe the low end is very muddy and it's hard to like distinguish certain things in the mix, which I get. I didn't personally dig too deep into that. I understand the criticism, and I guess from like a review standpoint, I'm taking on board that I can see why people would think that. This one, I think a lot less noticeable. I think there'll still be people that don't love the kind of like low end heavy mix on Current's music, but I just think it gives it like a dark, grungy feel that just works with their sound so well, you know? Again, not a band that's like recreating the wheel by any stretch of the imagination, but they are just doing things to a very high level in that metalcore space that I personally really, really enjoy. Again, I'm going to the gym later. This will be most certainly making an appearance for 20 minutes. And yeah, I'm gonna quickly go through my rating for this, and we'll be back on the Album of the Year website to give my score out of 100. Okay, so I've calculated my average rating. As you can see, the average user rating based off of 30 ratings. Again, this is taken on the 31st, so it only came out today. So there's already 30 people that have given the rating on it, and the average is coming in at 78, which, okay, I can see that. My average rating has clocked in at 8.28. So if I go through the scores individually, I gave the first track, It Only Gets Darker, an 8.3. My Severance, 8.5, very bouncy, very, very fun. To be honest, the whole album just has so many fun riffs and so many like bouncy moments that it's just very easy to listen along to. There was no moment in that album that I was bored or felt like it was dragging. because they just got to the point. There was no filler at all. They didn't like drop 3 singles and then just give us 2 new songs. Like, so that obviously helps a lot as well, because it's just 4 new songs back to back to back. Incredible. Making Circles, I gave an 8.2, Can't Turn Back an 8.4, and Rise and Fall an 8. So that overall comes in at about an 8.2. I think I'm pretty happy with that as an 8.2. Again, I think it's a positive and a negative thing that Currents don't really try and recreate the wheel. I would say they're not really generic metalcore. When I say that they're kind of like the poster boys, or they're flying the flag for kind of standard metalcore, I don't think it's necessarily the most generic. I think when you have a guitarist that's as technical as Chris Wiseman and throws in some of those riffs, it's kind of hard for me to accept that this is a generic band, because they're not doing generic stuff from a guitar standpoint. I would say there is elements of the vocals and stuff that are like generic enough, in the sense that I don't think Brian does anything that's massively unique that makes him stand out. But again, he fits the role that, you know, he fits right into the I guess the jigsaw that is Currents. I think all the band members play their role. Again, the production was nothing like too jarring on this. It was like not much I was paying attention to in that realm. Like, again, they're kind of one of these metalcore bands like Polaris where it's all about the instruments. There's very little like post-production added in there, where you get these big like synthy moments where it's like fully digitized. So that's kind of cool as well, and that's what I do enjoy going back to Currents for, because I can always just rely on them having fun riffs and being groovy. So if we're looking at my pillar stones, melody, I actually really enjoy Currents melodies, so they definitely get a big tick in terms of the melodies on this album. Maybe not some of the better ones. I think the best melody on the album is probably track number 1, which was the one we'd already heard before. The groove, I would say some of the other tracks are a little bit more groovy compared to the first track. And then in terms of like recreating the wheel, are they doing anything that's like spectacular? No. So they don't really get a tick for like that pillar stone. So 2 pillar stones, they're definitely a band that tick on. I think mainly the groove in this album is what's really tying me into this. Melodically, there's some moments over time they'll probably grow, but I think the real selling point for me is just the brutality of this, the riffs, the grooves. It's so easy to listen to from start to finish. There's very little downtime, no fat. So for that reason, I am just going to stick with that 82. I think that's a fair enough rating. I think it's an 82 because it does all of the things that I just mentioned really, really well. But it also doesn't really do anything that's like spectacular or warrants going very, very high, because it is something that we've heard from other bands, but I think Currents do this at an extremely high level. So yeah, that is my thoughts on All That Follows by Currents. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What is your rating out of 100? Leave a like on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It'd be much appreciated. If you want to support on Patreon, the links will be in the description. Much love. I'll see you in the next, guys. I was doing so well there. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.